name's Hannah and I farm near Cluny, Alberta. We grow 5,000 acres of wheat, barley, peas, and canola.
There are many hazards associated with grain handling, particularly when it comes to storing crops in grain bins.
So any of our grain handling centers around our storage. So we use a combination of flat bottom bins and hopper bottom bins, and occasionally when we need it, grain bags. So basically the process is getting the truck to where you want to unload, and then using the auger to auger the grain up into the bins where you're storing it for long-term storage.
Entering a storage bin can be very dangerous and exposes farm workers to entrapment or suffocation hazards, a leading cause of fatalities in the agricultural industry. Suffocation can occur when workers are engulfed by grain, or when bins develop hazardous atmospheres or a lack of oxygen. Avoid these hazards by implementing the following controls. Never enter a bin alone or while the unloading equipment is running. Never empty or move grain out of the bin while workers are inside, as it creates a suction that can instantly pull the worker into the grain. Always have at least 2 people on site when working with unconditioned grain. If someone does become trapped in grain, do not use an auger to move the grain. Cut V-shaped drainage holes below the level of the person to allow grain to move out and away from them. Call emergency services for assistance as quickly as possible.
The biggest thing is monitoring your grain and making sure it doesn't go out of condition. So putting your grain in the bin at the right temperature and the right moisture, and then once you've got your grain in the bin, keeping an eye on it and making sure it doesn't spoil. That's usually the biggest factor in bridges forming or crusts forming in your bins.
Grain bridges occur when grain becomes moldy or during the winter months when it freezes, creating a hard crust on top of the bin. This thick crust can form over a hollow cavity within the bin, and if a worker attempts to walk across this bridge, they run the risk of it collapsing. Avoid grain crusts from forming by monitoring and managing the condition of the grain. Keeping grain bins in good condition. If you suspect a grain bridge exists, from a safe location, use a pole or weighted line to free it. If you must enter a bin, be sure that you wear a rescue harness and have someone on standby.
Dust can be an issue when you're in a confined space with grain, so cleaning out a bin or even cleaning off a combine or something. So we do wear grain masks when we're working with grain or when there's dust around. So it's definitely something that you don't want to breathe too much of.
While some people may not experience a reaction, others can suffer from difficulty breathing, digestion, and stomach problems, or skin irritations and rashes. Be sure to wear a mask when working with grain, particularly in an enclosed area.
Grain and grain dust especially can be quite flammable. So making sure your equipment's all in good working order, just monitoring that there isn't a heat source there that could ignite grain dust, like a bearing or something going.
Grain and grain dust can be very flammable. Never smoke around grain or grain dust, and keep ignition sources away from bins. Maintain machinery to avoid failure that could cause flammable reactions. These are merely a few hazards associated with grain storage and handling. Be sure to be aware of the hazards and controls that are specific to your farm, and always educate workers.